Former President Donald Trump is due in court in Washington. He's charged with plotting to subvert the will of U.S. voters in the 2020 election. Security is being ramped up ahead of the hearing where Trump is expected to plead not guilty. He said the charges against him show the corruption of the Biden administration. This, Trump's third set of criminal charges, is seen as the most serious as he campaigns for next year's election. Let's bring in Clover Ashbrook here. She's a political analyst and executive vice president at the Bertelsmann Foundation. Catherine, good to see you. These latest charges against Donald Trump are very serious, but do they pose a genuine threat to his efforts to regain the presidency?
Well, not on the basis of the American Constitution, Terry. You have plenty of constitutional experts right now trying to figure out whether or not a president or someone who's running for the highest office in the nation could, in fact, rule the country from a prison cell. The Constitution does not make that crystal clear. But that these are very, very serious allegations. It's Donald Trump effectively against his own country. That's effectively the summary that Jack Smith presented to the public when he announced this indictment. So it's going to be a difficult year ahead, certainly for Donald Trump. But it's a highly polarized country, and still 54% of the Republican base believes this to be the man for the White House.
So the legal aspect of this is still unclear, but Trump does have rivals for the Republican nomination. Will they not be trying to exploit the former president's political troubles for their own advantage?
Well, we saw something extraordinary yesterday, which is to say that the former vice president, Mike Pence, on the campaign trail said that Donald Trump had attempted to put himself above the Constitution and that no man should be elected president who sees his role in that way. And that was the first public pronouncement that we heard from Mike Pence, who is now running for the presidency. You'll remember that he had a hard time being, quote unquote, dragged in front of these type of tribunals and the congressional committee that was looking into January 6th. So for the vice president to come out with those strong words, yes, he's trying to capitalize on this latest indictment. But I don't think we'll see a Ron DeSantis or anybody who's much closer to being in the running for that kind of candidacy make those kind of comments. So split field there.
Now, Trump remains extremely popular with a large chunk of the electorate, despite what prosecutors say was an attempt by him to subvert American democracy, culminating in the January 6th attack on the Capitol. How do you explain this continued support for Trump despite what happened?
Look, what we're now calling the big lie, which is to say that Donald Trump, and that's effectively the, understone or the cornerstone of this indictment, came up with this big lie that he had, in fact, won the 2020 election. That was incredibly persuasive to his base. If you recall, the people who stormed the Capitol on January 6th thought that they were legitimately defending their vision and their version of their own democracy. And I think that makes this moment so dangerous, because if, for whatever reason, Donald Trump gets off with a lesser sentence, doesn't go to prison, so much of the future of American democracy hinges on this indictment, hinges on what we're going to see play out over the next year, because we also know that Donald Trump has announced, it was a big piece in the New York Times, that if he is reelected to the highest office in the land, he will begin dismantling the bureaucracy and the systems of the state even further, attempting to turn the United States even more into an executive-led / dictatorship of a country. This is a very dangerous moment, a very dangerous precipice for American democracy. So all eyes in the world should rightly be on what happens over the next couple of months, precisely on this federal indictment.
And just briefly, Catherine, prosecutors have called for a speedy trial. How soon could that trial happen?
Well, they are trying to use every legal tool that they have to actually speed this procedure up. But we also heard John Lauro, the defense lawyer or one of the lawyers for the Donald Trump team, saying that they, in fact, will try to slow this process down. They want a very close reading of the documentation and of the quote unquote evidence. So there will be a battle of those two camps in terms of how this actually ends up playing out. The Trump team will play for time because there is a moment of immunity ahead of a presidential election when sort of legal procedures cannot continue or cannot be brought and that is what the Trump team will be playing for. But all in all, this will be a difficult process and procedure. I expect it to take, at least from start to finish, 6 months, 9 months. And whether or not that ends up playing out fully over the election cycle will depend on how quickly the prosecution can begin their actual testimony proceedings, jury selection, and everything that goes with such a process.
Catherine, thank you so much. That was Catherine Clover Ashbrook from the Bertelsmann Foundation.
My pleasure. Thanks, Terry.